the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you are answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
So today's seminar is sponsored by Lozier Inc. So Mark is the Executive Vice President of Lozier. He's the subject matter expert in environmental health and safety and sustainability standards with over 30 years of industry experience. So his expertise is in best management practices, regulatory compliance, audits, and certification. Mark is also an authorized OSHA instructor, outreach trainer for construction safety and health, certified auditor for environmental and safety management. He's an adjunct professor of environmental health and safety and sustainability at the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art, and also guest lectures in Rutgers School of Public Health, Columbia University, NYU, Hunter College, City College of New York, and Stevens. So Mark got his bachelor's degree in architecture and master's in green building planning and architectural design from San Francisco Institute of Architecture. And he has gotten numerous certificates from schools all around the country as well as in other parts of the world. So today, Mark will give us an introduction to leading indicators. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dubs. And Khalid, thank you for organizing all this. And our first slide kind of shows the commitment to the sustainability series at Stevens under the leadership of Professor Dubs. I have to say, very impressive, Professor, very impressive.
Thank you, thank you.
And we are also honored to be part of it and being a co-sponsor of today's seminar. So the PALMS and Successful Leading Indicators seminar that I'm very excited to present to you today. PALMS is an acronym, and I will talk more about what it stands for, but here it is on the slide. It tells you that initially it referred to the common contaminants of concern being asbestos, PCBs, lead, mold, and silica, PALMS. And it evolved to include other contaminants because guess what? We have two PALMS, right? And what does it have to do with successful leading indicators? Well, we're going to get into it. I think we have the critical mass, so we're going to start. As Professor Dubs already mentioned, my name is Mark Drozdov, and I have a lot of designations after my name. I'm very proud of all the credentials I have acquired. I'll be more than happy to talk to you about what each one of them means. After 30 years in the industry, I have had the opportunity to work on many different projects which required these credentials. And I also teach on the subject that I practice. I am currently the Executive Vice President in my day job of Lozier Inc., also a sponsor of this seminar. I have served as an ANSI expert for the ISO 45001 technical advisory group, TAG, in creation of the first international environmental health and safety standard. I served as the standards advisory panel chair, government relations chair with many industry groups, and was named an Innovation Challenge finalist by the New York City DOB with utilizing drone inspections for facade work here in New York City, which is where I am. I'm across the river from you folks, but not too far away. And recently I testified as an expert to the Landmark Preservation Commission here in New York City, and they coined me as a safety czar, and that's probably not only because of my technical expertise, but also my Brooklynese accent. So today's agenda, we're going to review what are the PALM's updates, what are the leading indicators, the benefits of using leading indicators, characteristics of effective leading indicators, and then leading indicators using data that you already have collected, and leading indicators for controlling identified hazards, and leading indicators for improving safety and health program, and using leading indicators to improve overall environmental health and safety. Environmental health and safety, please get used to this acronym, EHS. So as I mentioned, the PALMS was born as an acronym from the common contaminants of concern. And it started out with your 1 pound PCBs, asbestos, lead, mold, and silica, but through the years, it evolved to the other PALM, which is the pandemic that we've experienced, the new initiatives with PFAS, and something that here at Stevens, you're on the forefront with PFAS initiatives, arsenic, legionella, metals, heavy metals, safety and sustainability. And I'm very happy to talk to you about these topics. And anything pertaining to PALM standards and solutions is what I talk on constantly. So here we are, we're looking at PCBs in construction, asbestos in construction, lead paint, mold, silica, all of these toxins, all of these highly hazardous elements. Some of them are a carcinogen, such as PCBs, asbestos, silica, there are carcinogens. Lead is now considered a carcinogen in addition to being a poison. And mold is not either one of them. Mold is an irritant. But these 5 that you can put in the palm of your hand, so to speak, you cannot, as an engineer or as a sustainability manager, you cannot be ignorant of these common contaminants of concern. And the reason they are referred to as common contaminants of concern, just as a point of reference, when I was a responder post 9/11, and we were at ground zero testing for everything, over 300 different elements, we boiled it down to these 5. Here's another example of a project, a sustainability project, a New York City schools energy efficiency project, lighting upgrades, where we entered New York City schools. We see many, many buildings, as many as 1,800 buildings on New York City schools, having the old fluorescent light fixtures. And in attending to this project, we realized that we first have to deal with the contaminants of concern. PCBs, these old fluorescent light fixtures had ballasts with PCB oil in it. And this picture that you see on your screen is a PCB blob reminder, a carcinogen, because this man-made chemical is a carcinogen indeed. Each one of these ballasts would have this caution label advising the world that there are PCBs in the classroom. And when we look closer, we find that the old wiring, this braided wire insulation, was asbestos. And when we look even closer to the project, we find all of the POMS contaminants of concern. Here they are. I have them listed. PCB was manufactured by Monsanto Company with a trade name of Arachlor, asbestos-containing materials, lead paint on the housing of the fixture or the ceiling, mold on the ceiling, mercury vapor, the heavy metal in the fluorescent light tubes, and of course, every time we do the installation, drilling concrete, cutting cinder block, we're dealing with silica, another carcinogen. When we look at what standards, what regulations, what guidelines to follow, they're numerous. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, it will make sense to you, where to go to for the right information. Some of you may recognize some of these logos. Some of you may start researching them. I've compiled a slide to show you we as professionals in the industry have to be very much cognizant of every one of these agencies, organizations. And every time I talk to the people in the field, or when I talk to you as my students, I remind you, test your assumptions. We all come with a certain knowledge background, educational background, experiences background, and we may not be seeing the full picture. And having this mindset of questioning is very important. So you're in the right place. So speaking about solutions in the palms of your hands, the global harmonization system that was derived by United Nations initially has been adopted here in the United States by OSHA. And there are a lot of different repercussions we need to be aware of. And something that yesterday we might have found to be acceptable, today it is not. And an example would be if we take the palms and we look at each one of the contaminants, of the P and the A and the L and the M and the S, we are realizing that it's that the needle is constantly moving. Just as we are, getting comfortable in thinking that, oh, I know the standards, I know the regulations, and tomorrow it is something different. So I want you to be aware that you want to follow the latest guidance. You want to make sure that it's an appropriate reference, units of measure, and when it comes to regulatory levels versus safe levels, those two concepts cannot be equally interchangeable, because just because it is permissible by regulations, like the asbestos permissible exposure level, you can see on the screen, is 0.1 fibers per cubic centimeter. Do not mistake that for being safe. And the fact is, what is safe? If I could hear your voices right now, you would probably tell me, Mark, 0 fibers per cubic centimeter would be safe. And when we talk about heavy metals and the EPA RCRA 8, all of us in the industry kind of need to be cognizant of what they are and what the numbers are and parts per million. And just looking at the limits as they are presented on the slide, we can figure out which is the most toxic, if you will. And of course, if I were to ask you that in the classroom, all of you would, in unison, tell me it would be mercury because it has the lowest limit out of all the elements here. And in another historical retrospective, this chart not only shows the usage of asbestos in this country in metric tons, but it's also showing the different exposure levels, regulated exposure levels, that when I started in the industry, in the 80s, I don't know if you can see that number. It's right there on the screen, 0.2 fibers per cubic centimeter. It is now half of that. That's the number I had on the prior screen of 0.1 fibers per cubic centimeter. And a toxic material such as asbestos is still not banned fully in the United States. Just this year, US EPA announced a final rule to prohibit certain uses of chrysotile asbestos. And when we talk about asbestos, there's 6 different types. And the most used type is chrysotile. So there is a ban that took place this year, but it's selective. It's not across the board. Now, we also, every day we just when we think we got a handle on one contaminant of concern, there's a new contaminant concern that surfaces, and a great example of that is the PFAS, also referred to as the forever chemicals. I was very proud to be part of the seminar that Professor Dibbs organized at Stevens, along with the attorney that really brought this issue to the surface, along with many regulatory agencies on the federal and the state level. And, this attorney is quite a celebrity. There's a movie that was made,
Dark
about
Waters.
him. Right, right. And who's the actor, Dibbs?
Your fellow New York City person, Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo is actually a neighbor of mine, right up the
Oh, okay.
Yes, I see him. Yes, and great actor.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for putting that together.
Thanks.
When we look at what's happening in lead regulatory sphere, we are seeing dramatic lowering of regulatory levels. And this chart was shared to me by the EPA. The fact is, the numbers are going down to 0. And this creates challenges for us as professionals, in sampling collection, in realizing how minute the contaminants could be of devastating effects. And also, we need to appreciate the technology limitations in laboratory capabilities in analyzing this contaminant. So these are ongoing issues with us in the industry. So this way, looking at this slide here, this is really how the standards are created. according to the International Standards Organization, and I work with them very closely, ISO, the plan, do, check, act is at the core of every standard. And what we do is we constantly, the continual improvement is the key to where we want to be in the industry, in our professions as well. And just when we think we have a great standard, we plan, do, check, act, and we realize, we have to move it to a different level, and that's how the standards are moving up, and things are getting better. We making it better as the new professionals coming into the field as well. So what are leading indicators? Leading indicators are proactive, preventive, and predictive measures that provide information about the effective performance of your safety and health activities. They measure events leading up to injuries, illnesses, and other incidents, and reveal potential problems in your safety and health program. So basically, what we want to do is we want to catch things before they happen. You probably are very familiar with what we refer to as lagging indicators, the statistics, the measure of what has already happened. It's the events that already occurred in the past, and they're important, but unfortunately, we cannot change those numbers. They already happened. So in dealing with effective leading indicators, you probably all been taught this in grade school. The SMART principle still applies here. Whatever we do, we need to be specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, and timely. Hence the acronym SMART. Using leading indicators, we also need to realize that a lot of the homework has already been done for us. And the leading indicators for controlling and identify hazard, and leading indicators for improving safety and health program elements, something that we just need to proactively start implementing. And there are standards for that. I love this quote from Galilei. He is the one that created this Plan, Do, Check, Act, PDCA, as a scientific method. And I especially proud of this because him and I both went to University of Pisa, where I attended school as a youngster studying architecture.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the ISO adopted the Plan, Do, Check, Act, the PDCA concept, and we implemented that fully at technical advisory group that I worked as a representative of the US, along with 73 other countries. And a standard is, by definition, something where different stakeholders in the industry reach consensus. So it was hard enough to reach consensus with the professionals here in the US, never mind reaching consensus with 73 other peers in different countries. The comparable standard here in the US to ISO 45001 is the Z10. It's part of the ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, where American Society of Safety Professionals is the lead for that standard. I'm part of that standard development body here in the US. And the steps pertaining to using leading indicators are, again, Plan, Do, Check, Act. So here we need to appreciate how different people, professionals, writing the standards, trying to make our life easier. So what is this indicator? The definition of it coming from the ISO 45000 standards is it's a variable that can be measured or described representing the status or characteristic of operations, processes, management, and conditions or outcomes. And the indicators are generally measurable and can be quantitative or qualitative. Lagging indicators relate to the past performance, and here's the key. Leading indicators relate to factors that can influence future performance. And this is where we want to make the difference. Some organizations use the term metric instead of indicator, and significant indicators used to direct decision-making by top management are sometimes referred to as the key performance indicators, KPIs. A lot of the accounting people use that term all the time. So what types of indicators are there? When selecting leading indicators, the organization should ensure that the indicator measures activities that influence future occupational health and safety performance, rather than simply measuring activities that do not impact OH&S performance. Measuring the number of people trained, for example, or the number of audits conducted is of limited value unless the organization also measures the effectiveness of these activities and confirms that they lead to improved OH&S results. The 10 standard, and we debated this very vigorously, how to do performance evaluation. Well, first of all, what is it? It's a process of setting of processes that compare performance achieved by an organization against OHS management system. MS is the management system intended results. So once again, performance evaluation is a process or set of processes that compares performance achieved, that's the key word, by the organization against what the intended results were. The organization's intended results can include continual improvement of OHS performance, achievement of OHS objectives, and fulfillment of legal requirements and other requirements. More on the intended results. And Z10, the American National Standards Institute committee, we got together last time in Chicago, and this was a very heated discussion. The provision of safe workplaces and prevention of injuries, illnesses, and fatalities, that's the intended result. The intended results include the organization's goals, aspirations, as embodied in the policy, objectives, continual improvement efforts, and fulfillment of its legal and other requirements. As a result of this definition, the subcommittee, which I was part of, is also recommending revising the following clause. And this was indeed done. This was just published this month. So let's see what it is. The organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and vision that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome. Was the old language, and we changed that to say intended results of the OHS management system, MS, to provide safe workplaces and to prevent injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. So we really, drilled down on the language, and we changed not just intended outcomes, but results. So it became very much result oriented, and that's what we want. At the end of the day, we want to save lives. We want to prevent injuries and illnesses. And then a definition of acceptable level of occupational health and safety risk was introduced. A level where achievement of worker protection, regulatory compliance, financial costs versus benefits, and reputation of an organization have resulted in a substantial reduction of threat or danger by using the hierarchy of controls to a point where the remaining residual risk is deemed to be tolerable to the organization. And of course, this is not an easy thing to achieve. So that's where we start breaking it down and really drilling into it. How you determine the method of figuring out what acceptable risk is to an organization. And here's major 7 components that we identified for that. Z10, furthermore, narrowed down its indicator or metric definition, impact metric versus lagging metric versus leading metric, and the KPIs, what I mentioned before, as the key performance indicators. So what is a metric? A variable that can be measured or described representing the status or a characteristic of an operation, process, management, and conditions or outcome. Now there's some notes. This is the standards language. There are going to be notes. Indicators are generally measurable and can be quantitative or qualitative, which we already know. And some organizations use different terms, such as indicator instead of a matrix. OSHA took notice of this. So you may have learned this from your classes, your environmental law classes, that standards that are being used as a reference in regulations become regulations themselves. So OSHA recommended the practice for safety and health, and OSHA has decided that leading indicators for controlling and identify hazard is something that they strongly recommend. And what OSHA, this is a quote from OSHA, in deciding which hazard to start with, consider the severity of potential outcomes if a hazard is not addressed in a timely manner, the likelihood that an event or exposure could occur, and the number of workers that could be exposed to this hazard. And I mentioned the hierarchy of controls before, but this is what it looks like. It's an upside down pyramid. And, oftentimes my students ask me, Mark, why is it upside down? Isn't it unstable? And that's exactly the point. This hierarchy of control pyramid that was, it's a vision of NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They came up with it originally, and they specifically illustrated it in this fashion to show you that it's unstable if it simply rests on its bottom point, which is personal protective equipment, the PPE. Where it's most effective is to eliminate the hazard. And this is where we are relying on leading indicators to kind of hit it where it's most effective. And going down the hierarchy of controls, it's the substitution. Engineering controls are very, very important, and administrative controls. This particular illustration by Professor James Reason is one of my favorites because it speaks to the fact that no matter how many multiple layers we put in between us and the hazard, one instance, it will line up that Swiss cheese, and that's what it's referred to as a Swiss cheese model. So these layers they're not solid ever, unfortunately, because that's just the nature of the world. No matter which protection we put in, we'll have a hole in it, and sort of like a sliced Swiss cheese. So the holes are, they're at random and sporadic, but at one instant, they could line up the holes and get the hazard through. And this is the model that was derived way before our recent pandemic, the COVID pandemic. This was back in 1990, but it was used a lot in newspapers and articles in the press to talk about COVID. Most of the time, the inherent risks are never realized because the safeguards are in place. Beautiful. And that's great. It doesn't mean that we are safe. Every site job requires multiple layers of protection to keep the workplace safe. Now, I highlight this too for illustration further that, when the blame after an accident, incident, or an event kind of, you want to blame that one individual or one entity, it's never the case. It's never one thing. And I want you to be, smart in the sense that we need to appreciate that it's never one person and it's never one layer of protection that could have saved us all. So leading indicators to improve an element of your safety and health program. How do we quantify it? Well, here they are. We're going to look at management leadership. We're going to look at worker participation. We're going to look at hazard identification and assessment, hazard prevention and control, education and training, program evaluation and improvement, communication and coordination. And if we can break it down into the 7 parts and measure each one of them, we could actually quantify our leading indicators and see if we are moving in the right direction. This is an art, but it's also a science. So we can drill this down, and I urge you to all to look into this. And there are smaller parts of it that could be digested much easier than this whole notion of leading indicators. And this is something that takes time to absorb, but I wanted to give you a sense of what they are just by showing you it is here today. So here are some examples in graphic illustration, and let's look at the top one. It's a graph presented to us by OSHA. And what they're saying is the blue line on top illustrates the attendance rate goal. So the organization wants every 100% attendance, like your classes here, as an example, all your professors want you to attend 100%. And then the red line is actual percentage of workers attending the training. And it's a leading indicator. What are we doing for those 2 lines to meet? right? The next chart, the blue line indicates the number of trucks with brake pads that were changed regularly. Something that could be easily measured. This is a leading indicator. And then the red line, you see how the chart is showing the reduction in injuries due to trucks failing to stop. Well, by leading indicator, us performing regular maintenance, we actually affected the lagging indicator of the number of injuries that occurred. And lastly, the chart at the bottom, it shows that we have leading indicator of the daily cleanups on the construction site. We call it housekeeping, right? Just keeping everything neat. And once we achieve that, the number of trips and falls, lagging indicator of workers on a construction site, greatly reduces. And I want you to once again be aware of the fact that we may have all the parts. We may have checked all the boxes on the checklist. But is it an effective management system? And this is a slide that illustrates that we may have all the working parts, but if they're not put together well, will this car drive? And of course, I'm hearing this in the background. You're saying, of course, Mark, it will not drive. So it's not enough to have the working parts. Having an effective management system is critical for the car to shine and to be able to drive. And another professor who I'm very fond of, Dr. Edwards Deming, he said that a bad system will beat a good person every time. So you may have good working parts, but if the system is not there, it will not work. So the presence of the individual parts isn't enough. They must be properly connected because they are interdependent. And this is where sustainability needs to be very much, sort of a goal for all of us professionals here. Sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. You probably have heard this definition in such sustainability systems, certification systems as Envision. I'm working on a number of Envision projects right now, and I constantly remind everybody of the sustainability definition. I speak on this topic recently at the Javits Convention Center. We had a construction conference, New York Build, where I had an honor to be alongside of OSHA, EPA, New York City Department of Buildings, and many other respected professionals speaking on this subject. Very heated discussions. And when it came to contractors, we need to really appreciate that the technology is here to help us and increasingly explore technology that identifies leading indicators at job sites. And what I was speaking on is exactly that in this conference. Lastly, I was quoted to say that when it comes to safety, we only think of it when something happens. Those are lagging indicators, as we already know from this presentation. The fact is the leading indicators is what we need to focus on. And I was also quoted to say that there's some technology out there that is very impressive. In conclusion, systematically identify, correct, and improve. Implement the preventive measures in real time, track the leading safety indicators in real time, proactively institute the necessary controls. Safety management must be data-driven to identify and eliminate risks. Be proactive to prevent identified hazards in the workplace that could cause incidents and injuries, and use available technology to quantitatively measure the safety risks for every project. I want to thank you. This is my link to my LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch. And I want to again thank Stevens for allowing Lozier Inc., my employer, to participate in the sustainability series here. When I do this with my professionals, in order for them to earn professional development hours, PDHs, or continuing education units, we also have to do a quiz. I don't know if the time allows us to do that, but I'm here to take any questions, and I'm here to definitely interact with any content that you found interesting.
Absolutely. Like, wisdom, no problem. That was as usual an excellent presentation.